we are about halfway through Peacemaker Season 2, which means we have more than enough material for some theories. Welcome back, everyone. If you don't know this about me, I freaking love Peacemaker. Peacemaker Season 1, mwah, one of the best superhero shows. Actually, I'm just going to say it. The best superhero show I've ever seen. Barring X-Men the Animated Series, obviously. And what I love about this show is that even when I think I know where it's going, I don't know where it's going. So I have some theories that I want to share with you, and I'd love to share them and then come back and see if we're right or if we're wrong. But before I get into it, I want to know what your theories are, and I want to know if you can guess what my theories will be. So let me know down in the comments below what you're thinking, and perhaps when we do our response video to see if we were right or if we were wrong, I will take some of your theories in your comments and respond to them in that video. Let's start off with my biggest theory, which is in regards to this so-called Earth 2 that we explore in Peacemaker. This is the universe that Peacemaker goes through and sees his dad is alive, his brother Keith is alive, and he thinks it's the perfect reality, and that somehow something must have happened for him to have ended up in the wrong place. He thinks he actually should have been in that reality, and the Chris from Earth 2 should have belonged in his reality, where everything sucks. But does it really suck? After all, if there's a world where Augie Smith is considered a hero, is that going to actually be a great reality? Something is up here. And I think a lot of people have been onto this one as well. I got the sense that something was not right in this reality from the beginning. And it is because I noticed something that felt very strange. There is no diversity in this world, seemingly at all. I actually went back through to episode 3 when Chris actually gets to go outside of the house and explore a little bit of the world. And I noticed that there are, I can confirm now, having gone through it, 0 people of color. Every person is white. Some people are tanned, they have like a tan, but everyone seems to be Caucasian. So what does that mean? Does it mean anything? I think it does. I think you can't ignore that, considering that in the main reality, Augie Smith is known as the White Dragon and is known for being a white supremacist. So I definitely think in this reality, some of that has manifested in some way. And if we're celebrating characters like Augie as one of our top heroes, then the implication to me, especially if Augie is also happy in this reality, is that everything that he wanted to come to pass did come to pass. Some people have theorized that what this can mean is that, you know, during the Civil War, perhaps the South won, and so every person is now white, and maybe if there are any people of color, they're hidden away somewhere or not treated well at all. However, I also think it could just be that, you know, in the future, the government even just takes control of everything and makes those changes. We do also see the Sons of Liberty, which are this terrorist group that Chris has to fight. And I initially thought that there was someone in there that was even a person of color, but I went back and watched, and I'm pretty sure everyone is still white. However, they do talk about corruption and oppression coming from the government and how their acts are trying to basically rise up to cause chaos because they're trying to fight back against the government, who is corrupt and trying to just oppress everyone here. Now, what that means, how that manifests, we don't really know yet. However, there are some figures that have not appeared yet here, and that I think that might be interesting as to what they're up to, such as Vigilante. Vigilante also literally asks Chris, you know, have you seen my alternate self? Man, I'd love to meet my alternate self. I wonder what he's up to. I wonder what he's up to. Part of me thinks he could be a leader or the leader of the Sons of Liberty, and possibly this is a group that is fighting against all of the oppression towards, you know, maybe even people of color here, and are trying to do something about that, or trying to fix this world. We also haven't seen Adebayo, who is a person of color. So where is she at? You know, she's black and she's not here. Is it possible that she is also part of the Sons of Liberty, or that something terrible has befallen her. I hope not. She's one of my favorite characters. She is my favorite character, so please let her be safe in Earth 2. Let her be a badass. That's what I want. We also obviously don't know as much about what Chris 2 was up to, because early on in this season, Peacemaker took him out and killed him. Not intentionally, not wanting to kill himself, but obviously he was doing so in self-defense. And he talks a lot about this idea that, Chris was obviously must have been a terrible person. He cheated on Harcourt in this reality. He has terrible taste in clothes. And it seems as though he may have struggled with some addiction as well. Keith asks him if he is back on the pills at one point. And our Chris from Earth 1 says, no. And Keith also says something interesting. He says, you've been disappearing more than usual, which implies that every now and then, when Chris 2 was around, he was disappearing regularly. So what's that about? I think it could be that Peacemaker actually has this wrong, and that the Chris from Earth 2 may not be as bad as he seems, and that he could even be working with the resistance, which, granted, in this reality, to his brother and his dad would have been very bad. But it could be because he couldn't deal with any more whatever else is going on that we haven't seen behind the curtain. I also wonder if, the pills are a way for him to cope with that, or potentially if these are just like legitimate medications that he needs because he, perhaps is dealing with some mental illness or something like that. But that's also not something that we do in this reality. If it's supposed to be, reality that seems nice, but it's just, maybe they don't like the idea of mental health even being a thing. Maybe they don't like diversity. So maybe they're just against like all of these things that a lot of people would consider to be positive. We also haven't seen Eagly in Earth 2, and something that I've been thinking about since episode 1, since that very first scene in episode 1, what role does Eagly play in all of this? Because Eagly is the one that kind of starts off this season with Chris, waking Chris up in the middle of the night, and then Chris takes him to the pocket dimension so he can fly around, and Eagly literally brings Chris to this door. He is actually clawing and hitting his beak up against the door as though he wants to go inside. And I'm thinking, when Chris was in prison, he was surprised when he came back and his dad had kept Eagly alive and Eagly was okay. Is it possible that Earth 1 Eagly actually did die and that this Eagly is the Eagly from Earth 2? And so he was clawing because he actually wants to get home. That would be really, really sad, which is also why I feel like it's so possible, because Peacemaker is a show that is not afraid to break our hearts at any point. And we haven't seen Eagly yet on Earth 2, so I'm just wondering, where is Eagly? Is there an Eagly on this Earth? Because it feels weird for Chris to be there without his buddy, you know what I mean? Also, I think it's totally a thing that James Gunn would do, making that first scene super meaningful. And I instinctively felt that there was more going on there than what we were just being shown. And I still feel like there's more to that. I'm just never surprised when there's deeper meanings to a lot of the things that we see that we think are arbitrary in a show like Peacemaker, just based on me getting used to the way that James Gunn has been pacing this and has been building the story in season 1. And speaking of things having deeper meanings, there is also the fact that the code on the door is the same as the code that Chris uses to even get into the pocket dimension. So on the door to Earth 2, he says the code is the same as his dad's code, which could just be because two Augie Smiths, they think the same. There's also helmets outside of that door, which could just be because, just like for, Chris's door coming into the pocket dimension from his reality, there are helmets there. So once again, two Augie Smiths, they think the same. Or is it possible that these two Augie Smiths were actually working together? After all, we've now established that the pocket dimension is not something that Earth 1 Augie Smith, that Chris's dad, actually made. He found it. He's actually not smart enough to make something like this, which is what Chris says. And we know the helmets, well, we don't really know anything about the helmets. All Chris says is that it's a long story, and James Gunn has confirmed in the after show podcast that there is a whole story to that, but it's not going to be in the season. So maybe we'll get into it later, maybe we won't, but James Gunn knows at least how the helmets came to be, and it's apparently, according to Chris, a long story, but probably he didn't make them because Yeah, Chris has said he's not that smart and he dropped out of high school. So, not that you can't drop out of high school and then become a genius, because I guess you could do that. So, I don't know, maybe he did make them. I'm also wondering when it comes to things that, is it a coincidence? Does it mean something? Does it not? The whole owl, spider, crow facts that Adrian keeps spitting in the show, I think that's going to be more than just a running gag. I think that will come in handy at some point, and I think that while we're kind of trying to make it look like Adrian thinks he knows a lot, but does he really? I think he does actually know a lot about these creatures, and I think it's going to come to be that his weird animal facts are going to come in handy later. That's just, once again, a hunch that I have from the way that the storytelling has worked in the past, and how things that you think don't really mean anything maybe mean more than you think. When it comes to the room as well, where everyone is coming through these doors, we've seen a few other figures. We haven't just seen, our Peacemaker and the alternate Peacemaker from Earth 2, but we've also seen this alien that keeps appearing as kind of a running gag. He comes, he takes this little mouse or rat thing, and he puts it in the incinerator and he incinerates it. What is that about? I think that's gonna mean something. I don't know what it means, but I'm starting to think that maybe all the people that are coming through all the doors here are actually all alternate Chris's. So I'm actually wondering if that alien guy could also be an alternate Chris. And maybe he's just not saying hi. Well, one, maybe he doesn't speak English, but two, maybe he's got his own stuff going on, We don't know what his life is, but I love the idea that everyone that we see that comes from these doors could be an alternate Chris. Maybe even the alien that was taken out that has the pocket dimension initially could be an alternate Chris. I don't know. Now, I have one that's really, really weird. So I just want to start it off by saying it's really, really weird. I don't think it's super likely that this is true, but there are some things that when you put it all together, could it be true though? And that is Flurry Martian Manhunter? Now, I know you're thinking, that sounds completely insane, and you're not wrong. It does sound completely insane. But hear me out. Initially, when Flurry meets Economos, he asks Economos what form of greeting he prefers, which implies that he actually does care about Economos' comfort level. He then goes on about, is Economos a hugger, and then kind of tries to hug him, and Economos is like, I'm not into that. And then later, he's giving him a back massage, and he's eating his food, and all kinds of weird stuff that happens here where he doesn't seem to be respecting Economos' boundaries. But is it that Flurry is actually a jerk, or is it that he might be a Martian who simply doesn't understand human interaction and is trying to fake it and blend in? The fact that he also does the whole winking thing, I mean, there's a lot of just weird things that he does that seem odd, that if he were a Martian would make sense to him, just maybe trying to be a normal human, but he doesn't know how to do it yet. It could also explain potentially why he has bird blindness, because maybe as a Martian, he's never seen birds before, so he actually just finds that very confusing, and it's very hard for him to understand what a bird is, because they don't have birds maybe on Mars. I mean, this is a very, loose theory, but I do think it's cool, and I do think that it would be interesting. And the other thing is Mars has been mentioned in the show. I think Adrian brought up Mars at one point. And in Superman, I think Superman said something about how he's not from Mars because then he'd be like a Martian. Which, once again, Martians are from Mars. Doesn't mean that Superman necessarily went to Mars and met Martians. After all, at this point, Martians should all be gone. At this point in technically the DC history, just based on what we know about Superman's timeline. However, he might say that if he knew a Martian, if he knew, let's say, Martian Manhunter. So it is possible that Martian Manhunter could exist in this reality, and these could all be hints towards him, and maybe Flurry is our Martian Manhunter. I think that would be really cool. It would also be really weird. I don't know fully how I'd feel about it, but I just love Martian Manhunter, so maybe I just want to see him anywhere I can. And I really like Tim Meadows, so I think it would be really funny. I'm also wondering, speaking of Superman, if Superman might appear in this show. I mean, we did get an appearance of the Justice Gang. Superman has been known to hang out with the Justice Gang, so I'm wondering if we get another Justice Gang appearance by the end of the show, maybe in the final episode, maybe like how we did with season 1, where, the Justice League, which later was changed, retconned to be the Justice Gang now in the DCU, reappears where they show up. they might do that at the end of this season as well to kind of like keep that going. But they also might not do that at all. We might have already gotten our Justice Gang appearance and that's it. Maybe no Superman. I think it would be kind of cool. I don't need it, but it would be kind of cool. I'm also wondering if we'll see White Rabbit again. I think a lot of people were super hyped to see White Rabbit, and she really only got this like tiny little appearance and we barely did anything with her. She was just kind of like a joke character. So I'd really love it if she was more than just a joke character, and I'd like to believe that we wouldn't just use her just for that, but I don't know. She is also a smaller character within the DC comic book universe, so it's possible that it was just there as like a little fun cameo and that's it. Cameo? Camel toe? See what I did there? I don't know. I didn't really do anything. I just noticed that those two things sound similar. That's all I have for this one. Those are my theories. Let me know what your theories are down in the comments below. I want to hear about them. Personally, I'm just excited for the next episode. I can't wait to see where we go. And part of me hopes that none of these things are correct and that I'm going to be totally surprised by everything, because the only thing that has been a bit of a double-edged sword for me with this season is that I feel like because of my experiences with season 1, I'm less likely to be surprised because I've picked up on just cues for pacing and, like I said, the way that the scripts tend to be laid out, and I'm expecting to be surprised, which is why I'm expecting things to go sideways. However, I would also love it if I was wrong, because part of what I enjoyed about season 1 is just I never knew where we were going with things until we were already there. We'll see how it goes. Let me know your theories down in the comments, and thank you so much for watching this video, and let's get ready for episode 5. Take me on a ride. I'm ready, Peacemaker. And until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube. Thanks for watching. Bye! And if you like when I talk about the DC universe or comics, check this out.